Hey there, we're back for another Simply Tuning In weekly summary. On Tuesday, we talked all about low notes and powerful low notes. And the very first thing I said as soon as we started the lesson was, not every low note needs to be powerful. So when you're going through and you're preparing a song and deciding, what parts do I want to accentuate in my phrasing, you don't necessarily want to make every big low note a powerful one. Just because it's the lowest note in the song doesn't mean it needs to be powerful in some way. And the same is true for higher notes. Sometimes higher notes do accentuate the lower notes, but it is a more common musical sort of function for the high notes to be powerful. So this is more specifically, think about this more for low notes than anything. And the best example is the very first song we worked on, Nobody Knows the Trouble I Seen, where you have two low notes. They're both the same. They're both B flat. And they're going to be approached completely differently. Because the first one, nobody knows, you don't want to make too powerful because it's actually going to throw the whole phrase out of whack. Nobody knows the trouble I seen. And that's just not the right approach. Ideally, you want the phrase to stay up and then you reach down and grab it. Right? But you don't bring the whole phrase down. I know that's a bit sort of, again, I always get into this feeling in your body, but this is how I feel it. As opposed to nobody knows. That's too much. Nobody knows. And you keep the buoyancy and the feeling of the notes up here rather than down here. So that's the big thing. And then the second time we sing that low note, nobody knows my sorrow. You could bring that out if you wanted to. You don't have to. But it would be an interpretation to really grow that low note. So make sure when you're going through and you're singing your low notes, which ones do you want to bring out? That's going to be important. Now, we've decided this sorrow is a low note we want to bring out. What do you do? Well, first, you don't push your voice. I mean, you shouldn't, but you can push out the high notes. Right? It is a technique. It's something you can do. It's something that'll hurt your voice. But on the low notes, it just won't come out. You cannot push low notes. You have to relax as you would for a high note. And then you sort of feel that you expand outwards. That's my feeling personally. As opposed to the feeling of stretching you have when you go high. When you're doing a low note, you're really feeling this relaxed. The sound comes down and out. Almost think of like a pyramid where the higher notes come up and up and up and get smaller. The low notes come down and out. Provide that foundation. But this is still the same idea where you're opening like a flower, if you remember from last week, where you have this same thing. But you're really feeling your roots. You're feeling the sense of connectedness to the ground using your whole body. Now, in this case, we have this note. So let's try it with the song we were doing. Nobody knows the trouble I seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. And you see, I just sank into that note. Sorrow. And it's sort of, as I mentioned in the lesson, wrapping you up in a warm blanket. Yeah, usually the low notes aren't going to feel dangerous. They're going to feel comforting, right? You have a beautiful foundation to lay your phrase upon. And the last thing to think about is while you're singing that low note powerfully with the fullness of your body and the fullness of your resonance, that you don't let the sound sink. Sorrow. And you can sort of feel like, as I mentioned, being comfy, you can sort of fall asleep a little bit. That's what we don't want. So make sure that as we're connecting with our bodies, working in this direction, as I always talk about, that we don't lose this direction, the sense of momentum moving through the phrase. Sorrow. And your voice might also vibrate at the end. No, it doesn't have to, but it could. All right, one final run through of the Nobody Knows the Trouble I Seen, and I'll see you next week. So again, first one, keeping within the phrase. Second one, expanding and wrapping up, finding a nice, warm, full sound. Nobody knows the trouble I seen. Nobody knows knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I seen. Glory, hallelujah. Something like that. All right. See you on Tuesday.